Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a throwaway account in the relationship advice subreddit. The post is titled, "My husband's pregnant mistress begged me to leave him and I refused. Google sent me here because I need to let this out. I don't even know what she qualifies as, if mistress is fitting or not. It was a drunken one-night mistake." My husband's words. They run in the same work circles and field, but don't work together. My husband was dropped off at our house 2 months ago, drunk off his ass after a company event. He was crying and out of it, blabbering about nonsensical things. I tried sobering him up, but his legs couldn't even support him, and I couldn't drag him to the couch, so he slept it off on the ground, and the next day he confessed to everything. He was crying, and I've only seen him cry a handful of times in all our years of marriage. He said that everything was foggy, and he doesn't remember much, but that he slept with her. I won't type in my reaction because I can only describe it as violent. Not physically, but I unloaded on him and sobbed and screamed and then lied to our kids after it woke them up. We tested him for drugs because what he was describing was assault, and as awful as it is, I felt a little bit of relief that it might have been and that he hadn't willingly cheated on me, but there was no trace of drugs in his system. The past 2 months have been brutal on us, but we're slowly working on us in therapy. Some may call it weak that I didn't divorce him, but I just can't bring myself to do it, and believe me, I thought about it a lot. He hadn't had contact with her since that night up until she got his number and sent him a picture of her blood work a few days ago. She's pregnant and is asking him to meet up. That sent us into another spiral, but we agreed that I would meet her because there's an innocent life on the line. I wish I can say she's awful and I hate myself for this, but under different circumstances, she and I would have been good friends. She seemed ashamed and honestly looked lost. She's not that much younger than my husband and I. We're 33 and 34 and she's 28, but grew up sheltered by her religious parents. Not that it's an excuse, but from what she said. I asked her what she was going to do with the baby and she got quiet. I don't know what I thought she was going to say, but it certainly wasn't her asking me to leave him. She said that once her BF finds out, he'll leave her and her parents will cut her off for having a bastard baby and that she can't do it on her own and that I'll get a nice settlement and start fresh. I laughed. God help me, but I laughed harder than I thought I could while she started crying. These past 2 months have been testing my sanity and I don't have that much left in me. Once I calmed down, I told her that I will not leave him. If she wants to have the baby, we'll figure out support in custody, but that was about it. She started crying harder in the middle of the cafe, but hell, we were already getting looks from my unhinged laughing and begged me to leave him. I told her I won't. My husband and I have been together since I was 14 and he was 15. We stuck together through high school, got engaged and married throughout our BAs and masters, have 2 beautiful kids and we're trying for more, and I won't throw that all away just because she spread her legs and he once. He's all I've ever known. I don't remember a life without him in it. And let's say I agreed to leave him, then what? He'll marry her and she'll take over my life and be in my kids' lives, raising them half of the time. I didn't let her get a word in and I was crying by the time I was done with my rant, and I left her there. She's sobbing too. My husband and I already talked with a lawyer for a paternity test and we're waiting on that before we do anything else. My husband sent her a text with my contact information and told her all communications are to be through me before he blocked her number. I didn't ask him to do that, but he's trying. I just don't know where to go from here if it does turn out to be his. As always, I consider any sort of infidelity to be a deal breaker, and being drunk is obviously far from an excuse, but there are very limited instances where I think there is room for discussion. Anyway, OP decided to stay with her husband, and that's totally fine if she's comfortable with that. However, this other woman that he may have gotten pregnant is kind of insane. Now, I know I said that infidelity is a deal breaker and that OP probably should have just left, but that's not the current main issue I'm having. The issue I have is with what is going on in that other woman's head. She can't just look for OP to bail her out. Her getting pregnant is as much her responsibility as it is OP's husband's. That's not even considering the fact that this woman has a boyfriend, which makes her seem all the more crazy. So I just find it wild that she gives OP this wild request. I think waiting for that paternity test is the right move. User the Potato World said, even if he was not drugged, there's a chance that someone deliberately made him that drunk. Wait for the paternity test and figure out the best course of action. User Unhappy Wishbone said his very inebriated state, along with her ready plan for what to do with OP, is very suspicious. He's probably blackout drunk for the incident, while she's got a collected and cool plan for moving forward, seemingly without his consent. This is giving off very premeditated vibes. Tell her family and boyfriend and ask the lawyer about how to move forward with possible assault charges, and do not be foolish enough to have further personal contact. Edit. Collect evidence from other people who attended that event. User Enough Insect said, listen, if a man had sex with a woman who couldn't stand up because she was so drunk, we'd all be calling him a rapist. She at the very least took advantage of your husband. I know this all hurts deeply, but I hope that helps in some way. This next post was made in the same subreddit by a user named Kobe1. The post is titled, I had sex with my best friend and now I'm afraid of bringing this up with her. Hello, as the title says, I had sex with my best friend 3 times over the span of 2 days, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it. We went on a camping trip before New Year's Eve, and while we were there, we got slightly tipsy. She suddenly kissed me, which turned into making out and then to sex. We did the same thing the next day without even having a talk about it. The reason I mention this is that in the past we have flirted slightly and on one occasion kissed, and when that happened, we distanced ourselves from each other for a while. She had told me that it was a mistake and that we shouldn't have done that. This was 2 years ago, and we both have dated others during this time, which we both know about because we've talked about almost everything under the sun at this point. Now I could write it off as being tipsy and a drunken mistake, but it happened when we were sober at her place the morning after we got home. Why this is such a big deal to me is because I had asked her out before, longer ago than our kiss, which she rejected. I respected her decision and moved on as friends. However, I've asked her about these things afterward, and the response I got was that she didn't want to ruin our friendship. I'm going to see her later today to help her look for a new job, and I feel like I need to bring this up with her and have a conversation about us. But I am so afraid of it. She makes me really nervous because I'd be lying if I said I didn't have feelings for her. I also don't want to mess things up, but at this point, look where we are. So my question is, how do I bring this up with her? How can I do it in a gentle manner? She does have trauma from earlier relationships and doesn't have many friends who really care for her, so she can be quite avoidant and defensive when she needs to be vulnerable. Should I even talk about it? User Can't Get It Now said, help her find a job. Ask if you can do something afterward. Be supportive, caring, and loving. She'll see that the sex hasn't changed you or the relationship. Stay consistent for a while. Maybe be intimate a few more times. Sometimes the word relationship is the problem. Just enjoy having one. To this, OP said, you're right, thank you. I will keep being the same dude I've always been and not force or put pressure on anything that's unnecessary. User Secret Kale Eater said, just chat with her like normal, my dude. If she wants more to happen or to talk about it, she'll bring it up. Help her find a job, talk and chat as usual, and see how she behaves with you. It could be a one-off or it could be something more. Don't rush or put pressure on it because you might potentially lose a friendship. User Echo Sekiro said, girls usually don't initiate or agree to 3 complete sexual intercourses in 2 days in that context without having feelings. Just don't push things. Take it easy and keep doing what you do, since it seems to work. If she wants more, you will know soon enough. This final post was made in the pregnant subreddit by a user named Status Garden. The post is titled, I was held involuntarily at a mental hospital for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. A couple of notes up front. I am a first-time mom, and this was a planned and wanted pregnancy. I am still trying to process the last 72 hours, which has caused me significant trauma and distress. I am writing this out publicly to warn other mothers. This happened in Texas. I am currently 9 weeks and 1 day pregnant. I have been to the ER a couple of times for severe 24/7 nausea, which is triggering significant panic attacks. The nausea is worst at night, and it has been keeping me from sleeping, which makes my anxiety worse. Plus, I'm unable to keep down food and liquids. It's been seriously horrible. My first 2 ER doctors were at separate locations and both gave me hydration. One gave me Zofran plus sugar, but then I had issues with the Zofran backing me up. After another bad night of vomiting and panic attacks, I called my mom in the morning crying because I was so miserable. She said she would go to a different ER with me, one that was a full hospital with OBs on staff. When I got there, I explained the situation to a male ER doctor who spoke with me for less than 5 minutes. I told him about my issues with waking up nauseous, then the panic attacks, and then sleeping. I explained that the panic attacks combined with everything scared me and made me not want to be pregnant anymore, but I made it clear that I just wanted relief and had no plans of hurting myself or anyone else. He refused to give me any medication, not even an IV bag to help with fluids. He sent a social worker to talk to me about the panic attacks and said she could find a facility that would take me and help with medication and sleep, etc. I said okay because I was so desperate at that point and had been in the ER for hours with no help whatsoever. He never even called OB. I haven't even had an ultrasound. I was sent to the new clinic, and by the time I got through processing, it was 3 a.m. I was crying because I was having high anxiety and hadn't slept. They never gave me my nighttime medications or anything. I finally went to bed around 4 a.m. and then they woke me back up at 6 a.m. to do my vitals and said I needed to go itemize my belongings. Once I woke up, the nausea hit me immediately and I asked for Zofran, which they refused because I had to see the internal medicine doctor first. I didn't get Zofran until 10:30 a.m., at which point I had missed breakfast and was nonstop vomiting, but the doctor would only allow one 4 milligrams pill every 12 hours. I was so sick. Eventually, I'm seen by a psychiatrist who I thought would be able to help me with meds, but he said no. I couldn't take anything because I'm pregnant and would have to talk to a different doctor who wasn't going to be in until Monday. At that point, I freaked out because now I'm away from home. They aren't giving me my over-the-counter meds like Unisom plus B6 or my prenatals. They're not giving me enough Zofran to keep the nausea at bay. I said I wanted to leave since I was there voluntarily, but the doctor was mad and said I'd have to sign an AMA form and he'd place me on a 24-hour hold where the other doctor would talk to me before the 24 hours were up and determine if they'd try to get a court order to keep me. I was so shocked. I asked if there was any way I could talk to someone since they were holding me involuntarily at that point. He said no. I'm a panicky, sick mess after this and went through all the paperwork they gave me, which included the Patient Bill of Rights. This stated that patients had the right to be discharged within 4 hours of a request unless the doctor believed I was a danger to myself or others, or that I was mentally unable to make medical decisions for myself. I requested a written justification from the doctor outlining which of those reasons he was using to justify the 24-hour hold, and he refused. He just kept saying I wasn't allowed to leave until I spoke with the other doctor, who wasn't going to be in until the next day. At around 3:30 p.m., my mom and fiance came for visitation. I brought my paperwork with me and showed them the patient rights documents, and they were furious. They stayed for 2 hours after visitation and argued with the staff to release me so I could go home since they weren't even treating me and were withholding medications. The doctor refused to talk to my family even though I specifically included them on my medical release forms. They had a right to request that information and were seeking justification for keeping me there past the 4-hour mark. It got so bad that my mom even called the cops and filed a police report. They refused to let me go, so I had to stay another night without Zofran. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't keep food or water down. There was no doctor on staff at the time, so when the nurses called to get my Zofran prescription increased, the doctor didn't answer and they couldn't do anything for me. I could tell the nurses were trying their best and were very frustrated for me. The original doctor came back an hour before the 24 hours were up and clearly did not want to talk to me. I think the other doctor said he wasn't getting involved because it was turning into a legal situation at that point. He was super short with me, and when I requested justification for the 24-hour hold, he said it was based on what the ER doctor had reported that I didn't want to be pregnant anymore, and used that as justification. I was absolutely floored at this point. He didn't want to discuss the issue further and discharged me. However, apparently, no one knew how to discharge me because it was the weekend, so it took another few hours for me to leave. The whole situation was so miserable, and I legitimately feel traumatized by the experience. I still feel like I need help with the nausea and panic attacks, but I'm scared to go back to the ER now. It's been so horrible, and I don't know what to do besides talk to my OB at my upcoming appointment and hope she's more understanding of my problems. I'm going to file complaints with the hospital and the state regarding what happened. I am also going to consult with a few lawyers to see if I have a case against them. This whole experience has left me feeling incredibly hopeless and frustrated with the medical system. I feel like I was punished for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. As for me, I am currently staying at my mom's place. I was finally able to get some rest and take enough Zofran along with Unisom plus B6 to keep the vomiting at bay for a bit. I'm trying my best to stay calm and avoid a panic attack. I appreciate any advice anyone could give on how to navigate this situation. UserFreakNoog said, I'm so sorry this happened to you. In my experience, the psychiatric part of hospital care is especially broken and often more traumatizing for anyone who goes through it. You and your baby did not need to be stressed out by that. If I were you, I would definitely file complaints at the very least. User Sad Pepper said, this is the shit we're talking about. Women having no f***ing rights to their own bodily autonomy. This is why we're f***ing mad. Texas is a shitty state and a disgrace to all the women who live there. User Moshea92 said, I'm so sorry this happened. Unfortunately, with the laws regarding abortion in Texas, I think your statement about not wanting to be pregnant anymore was vastly misconstrued, and the physician reacted out of caution on his end. If you had, say, terminated your pregnancy after making that statement in the ER, then I'm sure the state of Texas would have charged that ER doctor. Or at least he thought they would and could, so he covered his own ass and recommended inpatient psychiatric treatment, which is ridiculous considering you can't take most psychiatric medications due to being pregnant in the first place. You were lamenting the fact that the pregnancy was making you feel awful. You weren't actually suicidal or planning to terminate your pregnancy, and I'm so sorry you had to go through this traumatic experience. I think it's also a bit ridiculous for the psychiatric facility to threaten to place you on a hold because you wanted to leave since they weren't actually doing anything for you anyway. Again, I think everyone involved panicked because you're pregnant, and with the laws as they stand regarding pregnancy in Texas, they didn't want to be held liable if something did happen. I would absolutely lodge complaints. They need to figure out how to better treat pregnant women. Update. I did see my new OBGYN and had my first ultrasound. My little guy is measuring right on time and had a heartbeat of 167. I feel overwhelmed with relief knowing he is safe in there and doing well. I explained the whole situation to my OB and she was incredibly understanding. She gave me a new prescription for Zofran and took some labs while I was there to check my electrolytes and probably some other things. I'll have another follow-up with her soon. At this point, I feel comfortable enough working with her, so that's my current plan. As for complaints and legal matters, there isn't much movement on that front due to the holiday, but I still have every intention of pursuing those options and will try to update as I can. Now, for the other stuff. I did not expect that post to gain as much attention as it did. It was cross-posted many times, and the responses were overwhelmingly sympathetic. However, there was a lot of skepticism, especially from doctors who read it. But hey, it's the internet, so that's to be expected, I guess. At the end of the day, I don't need any strangers online to believe what happened to me because I have recourse in real life, and that's ultimately what matters. I was accused of changing my story, but I think that was mainly from people who skimmed my post. Below, I'm going to clear up some things and provide some additional details, not because I have to, but because if there's going to be discourse about my experience, I want it to start from a place of accuracy regarding the timeline and events. Starting with, at no point was the court involved in the decision-making process. I went to the ER willingly. They made it seem like they were not equipped to help my situation and that the other facility would be able to assist me with my sleeping and panic attacks. By the time the social worker came to my room, I was so run down that I would have agreed to go anywhere they said would provide me with relief. I went to the new facility voluntarily of my own free will. There was no 72-hour hold. When I mentioned 72 hours in my last post, I meant that the whole situation, from going to the ER to leaving the new facility, took place over 72 hours. Once I got to the new facility and met with the doctors, I realized that I was not in the right place to get the care I personally needed. I was away from my support system, not being given the proper medication to control my vomiting, my anxiety was significantly heightened, and I wasn't being given any additional treatment or resources. To me, there was no point in being at the facility. It was indeed making my situation undoubtedly worse. After speaking with the on-call psychiatrist, he told me that he thought the ER doctor misled me and that I'd need to sign an AMA form, which would place me on a 24-hour hold. It was clear he did not want to be the one to discharge me and insisted that I needed to speak with the attending physician. He mentioned the possibility of a court order, but said it was unlikely they'd get one for my case. After that conversation, I went to review the paperwork they gave me during admission. I found the Patient Bill of Rights, which stated that for voluntary patients, they had the right to be released within 4 hours of their request, unless 1. I changed my mind and wanted to stay, 2. I was under the age of 16 and my guardian didn't want to release me, or 3. If the doctor had reason to believe that I might meet the criteria for court-ordered services or emergency detention because 1. I'm likely to cause serious harm to myself, 2. I'm likely to cause serious harm to others, or 3. My condition will continue to deteriorate and I'm unable to make informed decisions as to whether or not to stay for treatment. After I read that, I brought the papers to the nurses and requested a justification from the psychiatrist for the 24-hour hold. I wanted to know which reasons he was using. The psychiatrist did not provide any reason or justification beyond saying that the attending needed to evaluate me. That's it. To be clear, this is illegal. They had zero reason to keep me past the 4 hours. At no time had I indicated that I was a threat to myself or others, neither verbally nor in writing on any of the questionnaires that I had filled out during admission. The attending not working that day is not a legal justification to hold me. Their schedule does not supersede my rights as a patient. Now, after the 24 hours were up, the original on-call doctor came back to discharge me. He was clearly agitated that the attending refused to come in to do the discharge, so I never spoke with the attending who was originally assigned to me. The on-call doctor did not seek a court order to detain me. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes or less. When I asked again for the justification for keeping me, he asked if I had said anything to the ER doctor about wanting to end my pregnancy, and I told him I just said I didn't want to be pregnant because I was so miserable. I then tried to ask if he believed that was enough justification for the hold, but he cut me off. It was clear he didn't want to engage in any further conversation. My concern here was the implications of legally being allowed to involuntarily commit any woman who said she didn't want to be pregnant anymore, which seems insane to me. But I digress. To answer questions about the facility, why didn't I just leave? Because this was a locked facility. I couldn't just get up and walk out the door. How were they able to take me so fast? This facility has been open for only 10 months and they had beds and empty rooms available when I was there. Questions about my ER visits. I had 3 separate visits that took place over 4 weeks. The first ER I went to was a standalone clinic not associated with a larger hospital. The doctor there advised me to go to an ER attached to a hospital with labor and delivery next time. So the next time I went to an ER, I mistakenly thought I was going to a full hospital, but it was a hybrid facility and did not have L&D. The third ER was attached to a full hospital. I was not doctor shopping. I'm just not familiar with the hospital systems here. Regarding my comments about ultrasounds and OBs, I never requested an ultrasound during any of my visits to the ER. I mentioned the ultrasound in the original post just to state that I hadn't had one yet and hadn't been evaluated by an OB. My mother has a history of missed miscarriages, so in my head, I thought that could be a possibility. If I was being denied medication for being pregnant, I was just hoping that I did have a viable pregnancy. But again, I didn't request an ultrasound. Concerns regarding DIY abortion. I am not and have never considered a DIY abortion. I am lucky enough to have all the resources I would need to fly anywhere in the world to get appropriate medical care if I decided to go that route. Both my fiance and I work high-paying remote tech jobs, and in the worst case, we could move out of state tomorrow if absolutely necessary. Obviously, this isn't an ideal route, but it is an option that is still on the table, even if it's just to get care in a better medical system outside the state of Texas. Medications I'm currently taking: 10 milligrams buspirone twice a day, 50 milligrams Zoloft, Zofran, Unisum plus B6, and prenatals. No benzos. So to cut through all the BS, whether you agree or disagree with the doctor's course of actions, I hope most people can see that the facility was not the right place for me to be. They were not well equipped to handle my pregnancy symptoms. They were clearly understaffed and were not providing me with any additional treatment that I wasn't getting at home. There was no reason for me to be there. It made things significantly worse in my case, and I hope that if anything, people can learn from my experience. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their support and for the messages I received. I'm also so sorry for all the other similar stories I've read. It seems like there's a bigger issue happening here, and I hope others can eventually find peace too. I am going to continue to work diligently with my OB, psychiatrist, and hopefully a therapist so I can really unpack this entire situation. As I said before, I'll try to update as I can, but I'm sure the complaint and legal process will be slow moving. I'd also like to ask if you know any attorneys in the DFW area who may be interested in this case. Please feel free to send me a private message with their information so I can follow up. I will also try to answer any additional questions in the comments in case there's anything else I'm forgetting.